Every religion has a creator figure. For example, Allah in Islam or in Christianity, they believe in the Holy Spirit, this and that. For example, there is Zeus. There are a lot of gods like this in Greek mythology. How can we know which ones of these are true?
So in my personal point of view, I can say this. I think human beings have tried to understand an incomprehensible reality through certain symbolisms all the time. So what could it be after all? I think if we have a look at primitive divine religions, I think we should see clearly that they've lost their place in history. Because today's knowledge and the understandings we have developed have moved far beyond them, and I think they've lost their adequacy. Naturally then, looking at nature, some mythological gods don't know why it rains. Or there is no comprehensive methodology to know it. Then there must be a reason for it, because we have a structure that has an incredible fear in the face of agnosticism. It's still like that, it will never change. I think this is naturally a process in which mankind slowly tries to understand the universe. So what could it really have been?
People couldn't explain fundamental things. We say that they attributed those periods to gods. We didn't know the order of events in the universe. When lightning struck, they used to say the creator did it. They called the creator Zeus. They called him Poseidon. They called him A. They called him B. These gaps are slowly being filled with science. He says, after you fill them with science, where will you put this creator? Is what you described at first similar to this idea?
Yes, actually in the past I also read. It was Richard Dawkins. There's no other way anyway. What else could it be? Yes,
Suppose that you are a painter. You're already a painter.
Yes.
You went somewhere. I'm giving an example. You went to a place you hadn't visited before. Let's imagine that this place is an art gallery. You have seen a painting painted in a very different way. The paintings don't look like anything you have seen before. You try to understand it after realizing that the works were different. Suppose that someone came and told you, or you saw them, you understand that it is a new painting. For example, a new type of gouache. Now you have explained this painting. But does it mean that nobody has done it?
Maybe, but we will give this answer too. This is something relative, just like the other. My thinking style is also relative.
Right, but here, for example, to get out of relativity, something absolute is necessary.
Like what?
We need something absolute. For example, can anyone object to 2 + 2 in mathematics? As long as it isn't nonsense, as long as it is reasonable.
Not in terms of mathematics. It can be denied through philosophy.
It can be denied, but will it be a logical denial?
No, it won't.
Now, to this extent, I need to find absoluteness, such as certainty in mathematics. For example, if I find a source of absolute knowledge, acting upon it, I need to be able to explain it precisely, clearly.
So where do you start it from?
If absolute information is necessary here, someone must know that absolute information. That's how I start. Then I look at what's going on around it. For example, your eyes work. Understanding the structure of the eye dates back to the 19th century. And before that, we could solve eyeglasses. For example, we could solve the issue we call optics. But again, people need a certain amount of knowledge. But they are things that even we didn't know these events when people couldn't figure them out, they took place.
But why should it? That is, it doesn't prove otherwise either.
How?
It doesn't prove otherwise. That is, that a creator did it. It's just part of our new attempt to understand.
I'm just saying this, what I believe among these issues we think about is the most logical one. I think. No need to go too far back. There are things that we cannot explain even now, so there are things about which we only know the sequence of events. For example, in the womb of the mother, a sperm and an egg unite, and we know the order of occurrence for a human being. But when we ask this question, when we say, what does that operation, we don't have a logical answer. For example, in the previous statement, I reached absolute knowledge with my logical thinking. Similarly, acting upon this, I reach an absolute power. Why? Because it's not something that occurs only in my mother's womb. There are also in my cells the events of respiration, digestion, division, regeneration, etc.
Well, but what we connect with it doesn't have to be something to believe or to be known. It doesn't have to be so. Maybe it's really a name given to agnosticism. It seems so. A name given to agnosticism, divine power, or fairy tales like the other world. Something seeming fictional from the world. Talking about a place sounds to me very, very limited to us.
For example, I said this. I think one needs absolute knowledge because there are certain processes that no one can explain. There's nothing to do about the processes that have been explained. For example, right now we are breathing or our blood is circulating in our body. It goes to different places. For example, who decides where it will go? Or why is this blood going there, or why does it carry oxygen? Suppose that you made a painting. I'm giving an example. You sent that painting to museums, but you didn't mention your name, and in each museum it is regarded as a perfect painting, and it was on the news. I'm giving an example. It became a very acceptable painting by the artist community, and it became like a painting, say, by Van Gogh. One day they will mention it with its painter. Would you like to show that this painting belongs to you? It normally exists in human nature.
Depends on my mentality at that time. I can't be for sure.
Every person with a beauty and a great character or anything wants to see and show their own beauty and quality to others. I say, if there is such an order, system, and the Creator related to the order He set up, so many favors He does to us. For example, my heart beats like 60 times a minute between 60 and 90. I can't live without them. Or I breathe in and out 24 times per minute. I can't live without it either. For example, my skin regenerates every 6 months, or my stomach lining regenerates once every 3 days. If this renewal does not occur every 3 days, the acid in my stomach lining will pierce my stomach lining and I will die. He won't leave this painting and this work, this art unattended, and He will say that they belong to Him. If He is to say it, for example, if it's a thought directed to you, it will have been directed in a way where you can understand it. The level of understanding, as we have mentioned, is very different. Maybe the speaking level is very different from ours. If we're the ones He addresses, He will definitely introduce Himself in a way we can understand, in a way that our mind will grasp. He has to introduce Himself to us like that, otherwise it will be illogical. For example, if I make a painting for the School of the Blind, it will be like insulting them, something like that.
Of course.
They must be able to see so that I can send something like that to them. With this logic, I say, if He gave us a faculty like the mind and the reason to choose between good and evil, if He gave us an organ like that, a faculty like that, that organ has to exist somehow, logically. Have I made my logic clear?
I can understand it. You've explained it very well, but still, I think it's
still a probability, but I think what is a much more logical probability than these events, such as my mother's giving birth to me, is thinking that the cells come into being themselves. Why? Because I'm looking for an absolute power. I'm looking for an absolute mind, but it is more logical than saying these mindless unconscious cells, cells that cannot think of anything new, that I can't teach anything to. The cells that are not even aware of their own existence realize this event.
So I just think that we can think of this. We are in a process. If we really are to reach the Creator, we can reach Him in the way I think. Even if we can't reach this way, we can live like this. I think that is the important criterion. It is always valid.
Let me tell you this then. What does it mean to be a good person? Normally, returning a favor done to us in the same way is a characteristic of a good person. For example, if we return a good deed with a bad deed, the frame of a good person can change, but if you do a bad deed to someone who does you a favor, this is definitely a bad person. It does not easily change. There's someone who does endless favors to us. For example, he brings us from non-existence to existence. So I'm talking based on the assumption there is a creator. Besides, as I've just mentioned, he saves my life 90 times a minute. Because it isn't possible for these things to occur in any other way. Or when I take a step, my muscles have to move. ATP must be synthesized. I don't order any of them, but they happen. I say there are things that happen outside of my consciousness.
Then is it possible for such a power to forget some people?
How does he forget some people?
Some people are born in a way in which it won't happen, and they lead a very troublesome life. It's not a fair race to a great extent.
Then I can say this. According to my religion, this world is a limited place and the other world is infinite. So in fact, these things are limited. They are incomparably small. You know, in mathematics, if you divide a number into infinity, the result is 0. Suppose that you're in a dream and that you're an orphan, or suppose that your leg is amputated. When you wake up from that dream, it is no longer valid. The whole thing is over. It exists in my religion too. It says you've lived in this world and it's over. You've woken up from that sleep, you were awake, you've got up. It was a very small place, it was 0, and you got out of there. Secondly, since you were born like that there in eternal life now, there are rewards for you, rewards that are not given to others. For example, even for a bald person, there is a promise. He will have blonde hair. Even a bald person is considered, for example, as something extra.
He will have blonde hair. In this world, according to the perception of beauty of our time, it's nice to have blonde hair. But why should something like this happen in the next world?
A very good question.
Why is it necessary?
In terms of philosophy,
it is a very good question. We try to understand the whole issue from the world, so I think we are making a mistake.
I think it is
wrong. I think we are looking from an incorrect perspective.
Okay, I can give this answer in that case. According to what I already believe, the issue is like this. Since it is the Creator who creates not only my eyes but also my feelings, I can even be in the form of a horse when I go to the other world. It is not important. He is the one who will create beauty and will create me as an attraction to other people, because He is the one who gives me the perception of beauty already. As I said, as He gives us many things here, He can give very differently in the other world. I might even see very ugly people as beautiful and handsome, because after all, you can think of it like a game. Someone has power or someone has beauty. It has the following features. We adjust it from 0 to a height in the game. While setting the game, we arrange the weight, height, this, that, etc. Just like this, I'm just explaining the logic again. In the other world, the dimension of the creating, it doesn't have to be like this. Since He is the one that gives me the perception of beauty by making even the worst people seem nice and approachable, He can give me that feeling of beauty again. So the solution can be found like this. It doesn't have to be only like that either.
Yes, of course. It's not absolute. It's possible.
I got it. Well, let me say a few more things through this, then I'll leave you alone.
I've enjoyed, by the way, your conversation indeed.
Thank you.
Well, you explain your point of view very consistently, I think.
I see. Thank you. I will say something like this. Based on these, for example, thinking that an absolute power, or rather knowing absolute knowledge, is necessary, I reached a creator and I've tried to look for this creator. In this search, the most logical thing seemed Islam. In Islam, there's something like this. The Qur'an is the greatest miracle. Was presented to me and I looked at it. In the past, I didn't believe either, and then I started researching. For example, in the Qur'an, I think that certain things can't have been said by a person who lived at that time. For example, it states that iron was sent down from the sky. In verse 25 of the chapter of Al-Hadid, it has been discovered in the last 10 years that the necessary temperature for the element we call iron to occur does not exist on the surface of the earth. It does not exist in the core of the earth either. It is said that even the heat in the core of our earth is not enough, and that iron came to this world with the collision of asteroids or the world, or during the process when it was separated from the sun. The probability of the existence of this knowledge at that time is very low.
Logically it is, but it is more logical. So after all, as planets constantly collide and collide with mass motion, as they grow, their mass grows. As the magnetic field expands, they can hit more building blocks or molecules, and so larger planets form, etc. It's coming from outside from another planet is quite possible, of course.
For example, it's being mentioned in the 600s in a book doesn't sound normal. The Qur'an says, "And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander." In verse 47 of the chapter of Ad-Dhariyat, I've come across it as some amazingly different information. Edwin Hubble noticed it in the 1930s with the Hubble telescope he developed, that the distance between the stars increased day by day, and he found that the universe was expanding. I said, it can't have said it either. Not only these two, some news about the future is also given in the Qur'an. I did some research about that period. Romans and Persians were at war. As a result of the war between Romans and Persians, Eastern Roman Empire, which was controlling Istanbul at that time, suffered a great defeat. As a result, a verse was sent down at that time. There's a group called polytheists in Mecca. That community of unbelievers, that community came to the believers and said to them, Persians are people without a divine book. The Eastern Roman people, that is Christians, are people of the book. They were also sent a book. A prophet was sent to them, Jesus. Persians attacked them and defeated them. If we attack you, we'll beat you too. Thereupon a verse was sent down. The Romans have been defeated in the nearer land, and they after their defeat will triumph within a few years. Arum 2-4. 7 years after this verse was sent down, the Romans defeated the Persians. I think that's not enough as a claim. There's more. It says in the nearer land, in Arabic, Fi adna al-ardi. We look at the place where they fought. It is one of the rare places very deep under the sea level in the world. It happened in a place 200, 300 meters below the sea level. For example, I will show you an image. Do you see the image?
Yes.
What do you think it looks like?
Well, it's written nebula, of course.
Nebula. Well, if we liken it to a plant,
it looks like a rose, of course.
In the Quran, there's a verse. So it will be a terrible event when the sky will be split apart and will become rosy like red hides. Here's the strange thing about it. In 1699, an astronomer called John Flamsteed, an English and Christian astronomer, after seeing this Rosette Nebula, he named it so strangely. What does rosette mean? In English, that is, in Latin, it means rose. When the sky is ripped apart, the verse says it becomes like a rose. Can someone from that era refer to such a nebula? By the way, it says that the sky is ripped apart. I did a little research about it too. This Rosette Nebula, a star, normally stars burst and form nebulas, or nebulas may occur due to different reasons. A nebula that emerges as a result of the explosion of a star, it might not see there now, or it might not have written it. If it had written all continents or all that would happen, it would be a book that couldn't be read. For example, he mentions Rosette Nebula, he mentions the expansion of the universe. For example, while mentioning that continents move, he presents the following reasons. He thinks that at the points where continents separated from each other, they unite like a puzzle. The points of separation correspond to the same fossils. He says these continents must have been united. But no one gives him any support. Since he was a German at that time, people made fun of him. They say they are Germans, pseudoscience. It is the pseudoscience of the Germans.
What does it mean, by the way?
Pseudo exists in English. It means something like fake.
Something like false?
Made up. Invented. About 35 years after that, it was discovered that the continents moved 2.5 centimeters per year with tectonic movements. And there is one more very strange point. It is exactly like the expression of the Qur'an. It is called continental drift. You've probably heard of the drifting of continents. At that time, it is mentioned as drift in the Qur'an. Isn't it very strange? These guys were not Muslims. They gave it such a name.
When I find it strange, everything I've thought so far is not refuted. I don't think so. Or maybe one day I will think so, or they don't have to support one another for such a short time. Our aim is to be good humans first. Up to this point, I think we can influence each other's thoughts. As for understanding the other world, I think if everyone finds it himself, it'll be something healthier.
Okay.
By the way, I've enjoyed our conversation very much. I would like to express it.
Thank you.
Definitely. I think it was a nice conversation. Related to the things that are contrary to what you think, you deal with them in a nice way.
I see. Well, thank you. I won't
a
keep
nice
you any
conversation.
longer. Have a nice day.
Hello brothers and sisters, and thank you for watching the video. If you want to take a look at more of our videos like this, you can check the playlists we created specifically for you on the right, or you can check out our latest videos on the left. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so that we can reach and benefit more people. See you.